Do you know Leonardo da Vinci? For those who don't know, hundreds of years ago, he made so many inventions and recorded all of them in his journal. These were ideas that, even though he wasn't able to realize them or turn them into actual machines, we still benefit from them up to now. The drawings, sketches, and even calculations he left behind are benefiting our generation. And FYI, Leonardo has a design that at first glance looks like simple gears and wheels. But when examined, it could change the entire history of technology. It's like a secret left by a genius for future generations. And what's even more interesting is that AI has already decoded some of his sketches and writings. And this has really confused scientists in our time. What could be the result, and what secret was revealed in his journal? That's what we're going to find out. But before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us content creators a lot. Thank you very much, and now let's get started. The secret sketch. When people hear the name Leonardo da Vinci, almost everyone immediately remembers his flying machines. The detailed anatomical drawings that doctors still study today. And of course, the paintings, like the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, which still remain unshaken in the history of art. But there is one thing that many often overlook. Buried in the thousands of pages of his notebook is a strange sketch. It's not as famous as his flying machines or his drawings of the human body. At first glance, it just looks like a simple experiment. But when you look closely, it turns out that this might be one of the most revolutionary ideas that ever crossed his mind. It looks like a tangle of gears, wheels, and levers, like the inside of an old clock. If you don't think about it, you might even say it's just a toy or an unfinished drawing. But when experts study it more closely, it tells a different story. In the late 15th century, during Leonardo's time, mathematics was not for everyone. It was commonly used by merchants to count goods, and mathematics was also used by engineers to design bridges or buildings, and by scholars for difficult calculations. All of this was done manually. Just one wrong calculation could lead to a big mistake. Those are for businessmen or construction. That's where the mystery comes in. In Leonardo's sketch, you can clearly see 13 wheels with numbers from 0 to 9 written on them. Each one is connected through the teeth of the gears. So when you turn one, the next one automatically moves. In modern terms, this is exactly the principle that was used hundreds of years later in mechanical calculators. It's surprising because if the interpretation is correct, it's as if Leonardo wrote a blueprint for a calculator back in 1493, more than 100 years before it formally emerged in history. But here's the twist. There's not a single piece of evidence that Leonardo actually built this machine in reality. We haven't unearthed any prototype, nor is there any remaining physical model. It remains only on paper, like many of his other inventions that were never realized. However, the detail seen in the drawing is remarkable. It's not like his other more fantastical ideas, such as the cross-shaped ships or flying wings. Instead, the design is careful and practical. The gear dimensions are correct, the mechanism is clear, and it's a blueprint that a mechanic could use to build the machine. Some historians say that this might have just been Leonardo's experiment to understand ratios and gear motion, something he was interested in at the time. But others say that maybe he really wanted to create a machine that could count and calculate, a concept that was way too advanced for a society that wasn't ready for it yet. In addition, Leonardo is known for his unique way of writing using mirror writing, or writing in reverse. Many believe that he did this not only to prevent others from easily copying his work, but also to deliberately hide ideas that could be considered controversial. That's why it's possible that he also hid the design of this machine, because he might have been afraid it would be used in the wrong way, or that it wouldn't be understood in his time. After Leonardo's death in 1519, his notebooks were scattered. They ended up in various private collections throughout Europe, and many of the pages were lost for centuries before being rediscovered. One of them is this sketch, which was almost completely forgotten. But now, thanks to thorough study and renewed interest in his notebooks, it has returned to the spotlight. And this is where the big question begins. What was Leonardo really thinking when he drew this more than 500 years ago? Was this just a simple experiment on the movement of gears? Or was it a blueprint for an invention specifically intended for the future? The forgotten genius. If we follow the usual timeline of the history of technology, the very first mechanical calculator appeared more than 100 years after the time of Leonardo da Vinci. According to history books, the credit is given to a German professor named Wilhelm Schickard. In 1623, he made what was called the calculating clock. Its design used rotating wheels with numbers on them so it could add and subtract. In fact, this was the first step toward the automation of counting. But unfortunately, the invention did not last long. The prototype itself was burned, and almost no physical evidence was left except for the drawings. 20 years passed before someone tried again. This is where Blaise Pascal, a young French mathematician, came in. At just 19 years old, he was able to create a more refined version called the Pascaline. This machine was capable of adding and subtracting using a series of interlocking gears. And what set it apart was that the Pascaline was actually used in daily life, especially by tax collectors and merchants. But even though it worked, it was very expensive to make, so it wasn't practical for everyone. Because of this, its use didn't spread widely in society. After a few decades, in 1673, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz came along. He introduced a more advanced idea called the stepped reckoner. His machine was not just for addition and subtraction. For the first time, there was a design for multiplication and division. Even though the performance of his prototype was not perfect, and it often failed, it was still considered a very important milestone. In other words, he laid the groundwork. He laid the foundation for more complex mechanical computation that emerged in the following centuries. And of course, Charles Babbage in the 19th century will always be part of the discussion. He was the one who designed the difference engine and the analytical engine, designs that are now considered the ancestors of the modern computer. Although his project was also not completed, this is where the concept of a programmable machine began to take shape. So if you look at the textbooks, the line of progress is clearly written. From Schickard to Pascal to Leibniz, and later to Babbage, until the arrival of modern computers. But there's a big hole in this story. If all of this supposedly started only in the 17th to 19th centuries, how do we explain Leonardo's sketch that was made back in the 1490s? For more than 500 years, he was hardly ever mentioned, and rarely in discussions about computing. Many historians deliberately did not include his drawing because it is difficult to explain. They say it's safer and cleaner for the timeline to give credit to Schickard, Pascal, and Leibniz, rather than add an idea that was too advanced for Leonardo's time. Everything only changed in the 20th century. Italian scholars began to systematically review all of Leonardo da Vinci's manuscripts, and in the late 1960s, they built a working model based directly on the mysterious drawing. To their surprise, it worked. The gears turned and the numbers were transferred from one wheel to the next. It's exactly the principle of a calculator. And this is where an uncomfortable question began to form, one that still hasn't been fully answered to this day. If Leonardo was able to conceive and draw this concept in the 15th century, then who really was the first? And even more unsettling, how many inventions have been lost or deliberately left out of the official history of technology? The mystery. When the name Leonardo da Vinci is mentioned, he is often associated with flying machines, detailed anatomical sketches, and paintings that have left a mark on history. But behind his unparalleled talent, there are sketches he made that are more mysterious than they are useful. And this is where one of the most unusual designs he left behind comes in. A page from his notebook shows a series of gears and wheels with numbers engraved on them. At first glance, it looks like a simple practice of mechanical design, but upon closer examination, it appears to have a deeper purpose. The question is, why didn't Leonardo explain this like his other inventions? And why did he seem to hide its possible use? Leonardo is known for his unique way of writing, always using mirror writing, reversed and difficult to read. According to some historians, this was not just to prevent copying, but also to deliberately hide ideas that might be considered too radical or dangerous for his time. Remember, he lived in the 15th century, a time when unusual inventions could bring danger or suspicion from the church and the state. If the design was really a machine capable of counting or computing, it could possibly be seen as a threat. Just think about it. During that time, power was based on knowledge. Merchants, bankers, and scholars were the ones who controlled numbers and accounts. If suddenly there was a machine that could do this faster and more accurately, it might disrupt the entire balance of society. This could be the reason why it remained just a drawing on paper, never made public or turned into a real device. Some say there might not be just one design. This could be a prototype of a bigger concept that we may never see. Others believe that Leonardo intended to confuse those who would read it in the future, a kind of intellectual puzzle that only he truly understands. In fact, many of his notes served as experiments, but here it seems there's a mix of concealment and fear. In modern times, several replicas have been attempted based on the sketch. Some of them worked for simple addition and subtraction, but there was always some doubt. Was the interpretation correct? Or is there something missing from the page that we can't see? And if Leonardo intentionally erased or changed some lines, does that mean he intentionally left this incomplete? In addition, there are stories coming out that some pages of his notebook were never shown to the public, held by private collectors or still hidden in archives. If this is true, is it possible that there is a clearer version of the mysterious machine that has not yet been revealed until now? That's why this drawing remains a mystery. It's not just because it's unclear whether this is really a calculator, but also because it shows the very personality of Leonardo, a genius who always walked the line between imagination and reality, between science and art, between truth and secrecy. And in the end, the biggest mystery isn't just what the machine is, but why Leonardo chose to keep it hidden. Was he afraid that it was beyond the capabilities of his time? Or did he intentionally leave this puzzle for future generations? Even now, no matter how much time has passed, no one can give a definite answer. That sketch remains a testament that even the greatest mind of the Renaissance had secrets he never fully shared. For centuries, Leonardo da Vinci's strange drawing remained a mystery, scanned, debated by experts, pieced together through replicas, and argued over in history books. But all of that changed with the advent of modern technology, especially high-resolution imaging and artificial intelligence. What the researchers did was no simple task. Remember, these pages are over 500 years old. They're so fragile that even too much light can damage the ink and paper. Every detail was captured in extremely high resolution, using cameras and scanners specially designed for ancient documents. It's like using a microscopic eye to see every line and trace of ink. After that, AI came into play. If the human eye gets confused by overlapping lines, erased and covered ink, and mirror writing, AI has the ability to separate each layer. It studied the faint traces, reconstructed the lines that were almost gone, and put every previously messy line into a clear perspective. According to insiders, what came out was more than expected. The drawing was no longer just a jumble of gears. Instead, a clear and complete design emerged. 13 numbered wheels, each connected to past movement, and numbers to the next. The gear ratios were correct, and the carryover system, the principle where a full rotation adds a number to the next wheel, was also present. It seemed crystal clear that Leonardo had designed a mechanical calculator more than a century before it officially appeared in history. Even more mind-blowing, some annotations or small notes by Leonardo also appeared on the side of the drawing. Faint and almost unreadable before, but reconstructed by AI. And according to experts, those notes are directly connected to counting. This isn't just an ordinary sketch for practicing gears. It really seems planned for arithmetic. But there's another, even more mysterious detail. Researchers noticed that there are some lines that seem to have been deliberately erased or scratched out by Leonardo himself. It's as if he intentionally covered up certain parts of the design. One of the theories is that maybe he was afraid of the potential of the invention. Remember, in those times, knowledge was power. A machine capable of automatic computation could be seen as a threat, something too advanced, and society might not be ready for it yet. So it's possible that he hid it. He chose to keep it as just a drawing and never actually built it. Now, the new scans make things clear. This isn't a doodle, it's not a toy. It's a mechanical and functional blueprint. The gears are properly sized, the system is correct, and the purpose is clear: a calculator. And this is where the long period of silence began to break. Because if this is true, it means Leonardo was the first to think of computation, and the history of technology needs to be rewritten. The Shockwave. When the news broke that Leonardo's mysterious drawing had been scanned and reconstructed by AI, it spread like wildfire. And as expected, it wasn't accepted quietly. Historians were the first to react. Some immediately said that the results were credible and convincing. The consistency of the gear design, the exact ratios, and the clearly numbered wheels are hard to explain as just a simple doodle. For them, it's clear. Leonardo didn't just practice drawing. He actually planned to make a calculator. But not everyone immediately agreed. Others took a more cautious stance. According to them, Leonardo's notebooks were filled with all sorts of ideas, ranging from realistic to imaginative. So it's not guaranteed that every drawing was meant for practical use. They also added that maybe the AI is overinterpreting the faint ink marks. Sometimes it can exaggerate traces that don't really have enough basis. Even so, skeptics still admit that the new evidence is disturbing. Why are there lines that seem to have been deliberately erased by Leonardo? And why was the sketch placed in the middle of pages that have nothing to do with it? It's as if it was deliberately hidden. On the other hand, it had a different impact on engineering and technology. For designers and programmers, the discovery seemed like proof that the very seed of the digital revolution had already been conceived as early as the 15th century. Imagine a Renaissance artist and inventor was able to start a concept almost 300 years before it was fully developed in its modern form. According to an engineer who joined the discussion, it's surprising to think that the principle we studied in university was already seen by Leonardo as early as 1910. In the media and to the public, the reaction was stronger. Headlines came out filled with mixed emotions. Da Vinci's calculator could have changed everything. Was the first computer hidden for 500 years? This is terrifying. On social media platforms, opinions clashed. Some asked if Leonardo had built this, maybe Europe's scientific revolution would have come earlier. Others wondered, was society back then ready for such an invention? Or maybe it was simply forgotten. Rumors even came out that maybe there were patrons or powerful people back then who didn't like the idea. And maybe Leonardo himself chose to keep it hidden. Although there is no solid evidence, this only added more intrigue and speculation. At this point, the story has gone beyond just being about a drawing. The question became deeper. How do we handle knowledge that seems out of step with its time? When there is an idea that is too advanced for society, what should be done? Should we embrace it even if it causes chaos, or hide it until the world is ready? And this is where the real shockwave was felt. It was no longer just Leonardo's simple sketch at stake. It became a symbol of humanity's weakness and strength, our ability to create ideas before we are ready to live them out. The debate. After the news broke, even tougher questions began. What if Leonardo had finished this machine? If he had built and demonstrated it during the Renaissance, the use of automated calculation might have been centuries ahead. Imagine how much faster progress in engineering, trade, and science could have been if there was already a machine that could count and calculate without making mistakes. Inventions might have come earlier. The laws of nature could have been discovered faster, and technology could have advanced more quickly. But on the other hand, others also understand why Leonardo might have kept the idea hidden. During his time, a machine that could compute without human intervention might have been considered strange, frightening, or even dangerous. According to some historians, Leonardo was known to be cautious. He often encoded or wrote his notes in mirror writing so that no one could easily understand them. It's possible that he himself saw the danger, if such an invention were to fall into the wrong hands. This is where a bigger conversation comes in, the tension between intelligence and caution. On one hand, the drawing shows that people are capable of reaching ideas that are ahead of their time. On the other hand, it reminds us that sometimes society is not ready for inventions that are too advanced. Now, thanks to modern technology, we can understand the design in ways that were impossible 50 years ago. AI reconstruction, high-resolution imaging, and digital analysis have clarified what is really inside the mysterious sketch. And even though there are still some who doubt, it can no longer be denied that there is a possibility that Leonardo was indeed the first to come up with the concept of the mechanical calculator. For others, this sketch is a symbol of ideas that were lost or deliberately hidden in history. It's a reminder that there may still be many things we have yet to discover. From ancient manuscripts and archives, the question is, how many more inventions could be hidden in old books, just waiting to be rediscovered? For the public, this story is both thrilling and humbling. It shows that human progress is not always linear. Sometimes there are ideas that were thought of long ago, but because of fear, limitations, or lack of necessity, they remain just drawings on paper. In the end, Leonardo's sketch served as a monument to human curiosity and imagination. Even if it wasn't finished, even if it wasn't completed, its impact can still be felt today. It is proof that even ideas that have slept for 500 years can rise and change the way we look at history.